Hello and welcome to our yearly class. Today we're looking at story plots. Now, when you say story plot, what does it mean? A plot is step by step of all the events that takes place in a story. So when you read a story, so many things take place. And how do you put it into a plot? You have to put the events step by step. So that's what a plot means. Step by step events that take place in a story. Now first, let's look at the steps on how to write a good plot. First, you have the exposition. Now when you talk about exposition, that's where you start with the beginning of the story. Where did the story take place? Who are the characters in the story? So it's just like the beginning. You're giving us an introduction to who the characters are. Where's the story taking place? Now the next thing we have is the rise in action. Now this is where the character faces a conflict. When you say a conflict, it's like a trouble, a problem. So that's where you start to explain what problem is this character facing. Most times in a story, the character faces more than one problem. Yes. So you see a rise in action that has two events, two problems. From there you move to the climax. Now this is where you have the most exciting part of the story, very interesting part of the story, and you're like, oh my goodness. That's where you have the climax. Now, the next thing you have is the fall in action. Now, when the problem has come to the peak, like, oh my goodness. Now, the fall in action means, how is this problem solved? What are the things that takes place for this problem to be solved? The last one we have is the resolution. That's the end of the story. And that is where you have all the unanswered questions are answered. That's where you see how the story finally ends and you'll be like, at last. So this is the plot. It starts with the beginning, the characters, the settings. The next, the character faces a problem, a trouble. Oh my goodness, another trouble. Then it gets to the climax. What will finally happen? Then it starts to fall. The fall in action. That's where the problems are being solved. Things must happen for this problem to be solved. Then you get to the resolution, the ending, the end of the story. So what happened at the end? And they lived happily ever after. And the witch never came back. And the boy finally married the princess, or the prince finally married the princess rather. So that's the plot of the story. Now let's look at conflict. I told you a conflict is a problem. Some stories, the conflicts can be the character thinking in his mind, trying to make a decision. It can also be two characters having issues, having a battle. It can be a character battling with nature, maybe the sun, the moon, your fictitious stories. He's having an issue with the thunder, the lightning. So all these are problems that can be in a story. So it can be problem with the character and his mind, or two characters having issues, or the character having issues with nature. Alright? Don't laugh at my drawings. Now let's look at the plot of our famous story, Cinderella. I'm sure you must have read Cinderella. Let's look at the plot. The exposition goes, once upon a time, in a land far away, there lived a girl named Cinderella. She lived with her evil stepmother and two evil stepsisters. Now let's look at all the rising actions. One day, an invitation to a ball was sent to all the young maidens of the kingdom. But the evil stepmother would not allow Cinderella to go to the ball and locked her in her room. Cinderella thought all hope was lost until her fairy godmother appeared, dressed in a beautiful gown and glass slippers. Cinderella rushed off to attend the ball. As the clock struck 12, Cinderella ran away as fast as she could. Although Prince Charming looked for her, all he found was a glass slipper. Now you have the climax. Cinderella held her breath as the Prince Charming gently put her foot onto the glass slipper. Prince Charming took Cinderella by the hand and made her his bride. The following action: Cinderella went to live with the Prince Charming in the beautiful castle on the hill. Cinderella and the prince and Prince Charming lived happily ever after. So you see the plot of the story Cinderella. You saw how I started and how the rising action moved and how we got to the climax where you'd be like, oh, is he going to put her foot in the glass slipper? Let's see what will happen. The following action. Oh, he has decided to marry Cinderella. And the end, they lived happily ever after. Think of your favorite fairy tale story and write a plot for me. Remember to follow the steps I have given you. Alright? I'll be looking forward to read your own story. Goodbye.